Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. How are y'all today? Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, today's session is Ask Me Anything. So who want to get the ball rolling and start asking Dharma questions? Let me see. Wesak is just around town, so good afternoon. I won't be able to like greet everybody individually. Yeah, but I hope that y'all can participate in the session by sharing your thoughts or questions you may have. Li Hui, yes. So she has a question. Good afternoon. I have a question. Is the Buddha's teaching useful for my survival in a capitalist world where everyone is out to guard their own interests? Thank you. Very good question. Is it useful? Well, I like to think that it would be in some aspect. Yeah. I think in many aspects actually. So I like to share this part about my work life. So and it's a very interesting experience. Yeah. You know, the Buddhist teaching on no self. Yeah. When we think about the corporate world, we tend to think about the teaching on non-greed, non-attachment, and we seem to see a dichotomy. Like you either be a good practicing Buddhist, or else you choose to be successful in your career. I think there are many people who are successful in their career and they are practicing Buddhists. Yeah. And here I wouldn't be talking about like, it depends on how you define success, although that's one angle that is quite common and popular about how whether you define career like material success as the measurement of your success. Yeah, so for this discussion, this part, I want to just look at like when Li Hui asks survival in a capitalist world. So it's nothing to do with the reframing of the question statement. Yeah, it's not about saying, let's look at spiritual success. No. Let's just purely talk about being successful in the corporate world. Okay. So there are so many things to talk about. So I'm going to just touch on one area. Okay, and it's on the teaching of no self. Yeah, the teaching on no self. Seems to be a no-brainer, right? Like Sifu, you just answered your own question by saying to focus on no self. Yeah, because part of the question is where everyone is out to guard their own interests. So if everybody is guarding their own interests and we practice no self, then we are not guarding our own interests. That means we lose out. Everybody will get interest, we don't get interest. Or so it seems. My own experience. Let me just first say my own experience in terms of how I usually work. Yeah. I think my peers at work last time would probably not describe me as being docile at work. They probably won't describe me as being meek at work, being a pushover at work. No, I'm a person who would go after projects, go after what I think is the right way of doing things. Yeah. So in a way that is not very no self. And then at some point, there was one time where I was assigned a certain project. Yeah. And so usually when we are assigned projects, or rather when we are given a list of projects, we usually try to go for the tougher one, the more visible one. Yeah, I don't know how other people work, but that's how how we worked in consulting. We go for the tougher ones. Because the tougher projects give us a chance to try newer things out, give us a chance to shine. Yeah. Challenges where if you can overcome technical challenges, you can come out with an infrastructure or an architecture that others cannot think of in a short time, that people cannot even fathom the problem statement, then you win, right? Yeah. So fast forward to a point where at that point in time, I decided to, well, ordain. Yeah. So it's a couple of months, about half a year. Yeah, about 5 to 6 months before I finally leave the company. So at that point in time, I decided I've already set my mind on ordaining. And before we think that, oh, in that case, Sifu, at that point in time, you just don't care. No, it's not that I don't care. It's that I care in a different way. I still care for the project, but I care in a different way. I stopped caring about my own interests in a way. But it produced very interesting results. Let me share. So the first thing is assignment of projects. So my boss told me that there's going to be this project with the Thai telco EIS. It was way back then. I don't know why they are still around, but it was an interesting project. So before we even started, went for the briefing meeting. So I was told that there'll be another guy going. Yeah. But when we met up for the meeting, in the end there were 3 of us. Yeah. In the end we have 3 person. And I was like, okay, I didn't think much about it. So my boss did a briefing, gave us the lowdown on it, and then he told us that one of the lead guys is going to go because he's the Bistock champion. Yeah, Shu Heng. Yeah, I remember their names, but I'm not sure whether, I think it should be okay. The whole discussion, there's nothing negative about it. So Shu Heng was the Bistock champion in the sub. So he's going, and then between me and the other guy. So my boss looked at me and asked me like, so what do you think? So I said, well, I'm okay either way. If you think that I'm suitable, I'll be happy to go. Yeah, I'll do my best. But if you think that the other guy, Derek, if he's suitable, then I'll stay, and I'll be happy to provide support. Yeah, and I said it genuinely. I at that point in time, it's so liberating, because like you must know that was so not me, because before that I'll be like all out convincing my boss that I'm the man, I'm the guy you can depend on. Yeah, send me now. Like, you should have sent me yesterday, not talk about it today. I should be there now. I should be getting it out. By that point in time, in my mind, it's not so much that I'm not interested in the work because I'm going to become a monk, but it's more that I don't see a need to have me being the person doing it anymore. Yeah, and I'm even willing to play second fiddle. I'm willing to play support. Yeah, and I basically told them that I'll stay back. I have the material, and I will, like I'm just a phone call or an email away. I'll just provide support from back in Singapore, which is what we do sometimes. We have teams going out, and then the rest who are between engagements or something will help, right? So then he's like, I think he may have been surprised, and then he said, okay, then I'll keep you posted. So I said, okay, if there's nothing, I will be outside. So I went out, and then later that evening, I got a phone call from the other guy who is supposed to go, yeah. And then he called me and he said that, oh, change our plan. I was like, oh, what happened? And then he said, oh, boss, after that changed his mind. He decided to send you. I was like, huh? What's going on? So I don't know what happened actually. Yeah. Maybe he really changed his mind. Was it a test? I don't know. Yeah. But in the end we went. And that was not the end, because when we went over and then we were working on the project, it was supposed to, we arrived, and then we had a meeting with with our partners, with our local sub partners, and then with EIS, and we were discussing the proof of concept. Yeah. Then in the process of discussion, again, I remember very clearly, just maybe 1 or 2 months back, a few months back, on a separate project, I was with a senior consultant. We were on site. I was actually the point man, and he was with me on the project. And I was like bulldozing everything my way. I mean, you feel very powerful. You feel in charge. You feel in control. You know. And if you think about it, a lot of what we do, not just in the corporate world, a lot of what we do in life is all about that, getting things done our way. Of course, sometimes our way is the right way, but do we want things to be done our way because we know it's the right way, or because it is our way, so we think it's right? Is it right by itself? Is it the best way by itself? And it happened to be our way? Or is it that because it's our way, so we think of it as must be the best way? So for me, when I was there discussing with my colleague after the kickoff meeting and having the strategy plan, then we break down into our different teams, and me and my colleague, we started to brainstorm on how to come up with the POC, because we literally have like 1 or 2 days to come up with a proof of concept. It's crazy. Like now I think back, it's like we are nuts. We go in like first morning or afternoon, we have a meeting, that night have another meeting, like 1 or 2 days later we have a POC. Like not 1 or 2 weeks, like within that 1 or 2 days we come up with a proof of concept. Yeah. But it was that 1 or 2 days was more like a mock-up sort of. Yeah. And after we clear that, then we must do the actual POC. So it was quite crazy. And as we were having discussion, so my colleague Shu Heng, he shared his point, then I shared my point, and I was thinking through, and then something clicked in me, and I thought, you know what? I think yours can actually work. Yeah, why don't we go with yours? Yeah. And I may be overreading things, but I think he may have been a bit taken aback. It's like, because not because he was suspicious or anything, but I think he was just not used to me simply agreeing to go with his way. Yeah, that's how aggressive I was at work last time. Not a very typical Buddhist, like Amitofo, I'm quite an atypical Buddhist. I mean, that's a fact. I can't help it. But so yeah, I literally just told him, you know what? Let's just go with your way. Yeah. And the thing is, to give you some context, I think most people in the corporate world will know that if you're in a project and there's 2 persons and there's no clear lead in the project, then everybody want to implement it their way, because then the credit goes to them, right? And understandable, yeah. I mean, like, while I look at it differently since then, I mean, from that point onward, I just look at it quite differently. But I can understand why people would want to go things my way, yeah, because if you're going to do the job anyway, why don't you get the credit, right? Especially if the differences is not so significant. But at that point in time, I was like, okay, if technically both approaches can work, so why should I have to insist on doing it my way? And so the meeting was really short. Yeah, and he looked a bit surprised. The important thing is because I genuinely agreed and saw that his way can work. After that, I was doing what I can to help him, to help his approach work. And this is where politicking at work come in, isn't it? Because nobody want to lose, or rather, everybody want to win their way. And so what happened is that I think many times meetings are longer than they need to. Yeah, people are just always like, first of all, not listening to each other. You know, 你讲你的，我讲我的. Like you say your points, and then I just say my points, and I never really listen to your points. Or as we are listening to other people's point, each party, each stakeholder is just trying to gun down the other side. You know, so we end up spending a lot of time going round and round in circles, trying to prove that their way is the best, and not trying to find out which is the best way. You see the difference? When we are so preoccupied with self-interest, we end up wasting time. Put it bluntly, we're wasting time. We're wasting so much time trying to prove that our way, our point of view is correct, than to really sit down and honestly look at it and say, which way is the best way? Because sometimes all are okay. If the difference is just marginal, you know, marginal gain to take this approach or that approach, then, you know, it's okay. Why insist that it must be one of the way, or for that matter, our way? So that, to me, that's one of the first benefit. If we can take the self out of the equation, you know, then we truly teamwork. Like, you think about how many of those team building, HR, like those training, right? And many times people go for those training, just go for the rah-rah, and I must say, I'm one of those crazy guys who actually believe in it. But I know for a fact that many people go through all those team building, whatever. Okay, I'm a cynical person, but I think there are a significant number of people who don't believe in it. Because maybe they start off like me, believing in it, but then when they really try to teamwork, people don't teamwork. So we end up with the, what they call it, the prisoner's dilemma. Do we want to cooperate, or do you want to just keep on sabotaging each other? Yeah. I mean, all those efforts to get people to work together, right? It's about this. It's about no self. It's about focusing on the larger interest, to look at it and say, instead of just trying to prove that your way is best, try to find really the best way. That's teamwork, isn't it? Yeah. So for me, it was such a liberating moment, because I'm freed. I'm not fully awakened, but even at that point in time, I'm freed from having to argue and debate with people just to get things my way, even if it's with one colleague. And it was so liberating. Now, initially, I think there were probably a bit of like skepticism, but over the next few days, as we work on it, there was a deeper sense of trust that the other person can truly trust us. And once that trust is established, the whole dynamics is so different, because you see the other person really also focusing just on getting the things done and not trying to guard against each other, you know? Yeah, and I feel that that was so beautiful. I wish I discovered that earlier, and not just towards the end of my working career. Now then, the most crazy thing is, after that, when we cleared the initial presentation and they decided, okay, AIS bought in, and they're like, okay, I think let's do it. And the craziest thing was, the local, not our partner and our partner and the other team, they decided to call me in. I was like, what? No, he's the champion, and that idea was actually his. So I don't know how things work out, man. It's so crazy. Yeah, but of course, in a couple of months' time after that, I left and become a monk. Now, of course, we can always say that, well, you kind of just, establish a beachhead and then just left them to their devices. I think even if I had stayed on, things would be different. Yeah, different between fighting with each other versus working with one another. Yeah, and I think it perhaps there's a space for us to work with one another. Yeah. The trouble is, it boils down to that prisoner's dilemma model, where someone has to take the first step to trust, but of course the question is, if the trust is not reciprocated, yeah, when you take that first step and the other person repeatedly just have the cake and eat it, so then what do? Do you then switch back to the fight with each other? Are you okay? For me, I like to think that we need more people to try. Yeah. And while I tried this right at the end of my career, before that, from my time for my industry attachment, the internship in university, all the way to R&D and then consulting, my work ethos was always, if I finish my work, I go to my boss, update him immediately. I don't wait for him to chase me. My boss almost never have to chase me, except for one or two projects where I was really new and I kind of but when I'm on the game, I chase my boss. I chase my boss for an update of whether the code is okay. I chase my boss to try new things. So I'm not a person who, like talking about self-interest, right? The whole idea that you cannot finish work and perhaps, if you finish work, you should just sit around, twiddle your thumbs, don't spoil market, and sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And when the boss is around, you act busy. And then when the boss finally chases you, you ask for 1 or 2 more days, and then later you deliver to show that there's value, that it's not easy. I don't know whether people still do that, but I think in the corporate world, people do that. And I was in some ways advised to do that also, but I just decided that'd be so boring. Like, I cannot imagine just sitting around the whole day without anything to do. So whenever I finish my project or my module, and my team lead would ask me back in R&D, would be asking me to wait for the rest to do integration. And then I'll go back to my cubicle and I'm like thinking, what else can I do? Then I'll be looking at technical articles and I'm like, okay. ETL, active templates library. Maybe I should try that. Multi-threading. And I'm like going to my boss and saying like, hey, can I check out a code? And he'd be like, I thought you just check in and you're done. I'm like, well, I was thinking maybe I can rewrite that module to be multi-threaded. And you look at me with with a crazy look like, and why do you need to do that? I'm like, well, multi-threading, then things will be faster, for the media library. And then he's like, and how much time will you shave? A couple of seconds. It's like, like usually at work, bosses have to like squeeze their employee to get them to do work, just their work. And then they got to like really cajole them, bribe them, reward them to get them to do more work. For me, it was a very different relationship. For me, my boss had to rein me in to stop me from doing too much work. Yeah, and I would just go back to him like every 1 or 2 days to submit new changes that is not part of his plan. Like I finished the base code and then I'll just extend it with all kinds of new things until one day I went to my boss and I said, can I check out my code? And he looked at me, no. And I'm like, I said, no, your code is perfect. You don't need to do any more things. I don't want to see you for the next 3 days. I've been telling students this funny story. Yeah, I remember he told me, I don't want to see you for the next few days. Go to the pantry, go to the canteen, go and eat, read newspaper, sleep, play games, whatever you do, don't come and disturb me. Yeah, and since then, the working relationship was just amazing. Because once again, I established trust with him. He knows that if I say that something can be done, he knows that he can trust me to do it. And if I tell him I need more time, he knows that I really need more time. That I'm not just trying to Skype, I'm not just trying to pull a fast one. He knows that he can trust my words. And at the same time, because of that, I also learned something else. Bosses, before they give you work, they need to prepare the work. Bosses cannot just throw you things, They need to prepare the work, and then they need to assign the work. So they need to do task assignment, because unless it's a one-to-one, your boss and you, but many times it's one boss with many staff, right? So he need to prepare multiple sets of tasks and then do assignments to the right person. And while you're doing your work, he need to keep tabs. He need to monitor progress and find out whether you guys need more resources, yada yada. And when you finish, they need to check through your work. They cannot just throw it over the wall, Yeah, so I came to the point where my bosses ran out of things for me to do. Yeah, it was a most happy situation. So it became a virtuous cycle. Instead of bosses chasing me and me trying to hide from bosses, it was me chasing bosses. And I'm sure many of you experienced that if you manage to get into this groove, you're in charge of your time. Because then the boss trusts you to manage your time. And what happened is that because I'm ahead of schedule, I have time between the project and integration testing. So I had time to research and find out more about new ways to code. And that enabled me to be even more efficient for the next project. So that by the time the next project comes, I have like tons of ideas like just waiting to come out, Yeah, in fact, while I was in R&D, I had time to write a few different pet programs of my own. Yeah. And so these are different angles of what I think being a Buddhist, applying the Buddha's teaching doesn't mean that you have to become either you go wholesale one way or the other. Like what I just described about work, the attitude. It's about cherishing our precious human life, isn't it? That in 8 hours, if you spend 4 hours, or nobody work 8 hours these days, 10 hours, 10 or more hours, let's say 10 hours. and you do 4 tasks, your boss give you 4 tasks, and let's say you finish it. Your boss give you maybe 2 days or 3 days, you know, with some buffer. But somehow you manage to finish it in half a day. 4 hours time, 5 hours time, you finish it. So what are you going to do? Sit around, twiddle your thumbs. You must know that that is your life that you are using up. Never think you are using up your company's time for your own gain by sitting around. It is your life, your human life. It is not as though when you go to work, you are using your boss' life, you know. Your boss is using his life to be at work. You are using your life to be at work. So if you sit around at work, you are sitting your life away. And how many of us are sitting literally meditating? So my attitude is, if I'm given some task, I finish it. I want to make full use of my time there. Yeah, give me more things to do. I can learn more. I want to try more things. Yeah, and if you think about it from the Bodhisattva point of view, work is about helping people. You know, yeah, work is always about helping people. Yes, there's the compensation part, but it's about helping people solve their problems, transforming their problems into other problems until some point where one person can actually solve it. Yeah. So it's about your mindset. Do you want to go to work just to work for X hours to get Y dollars? Or do you want to go to work for X hours, learn Z number of things, and help Y number of people, and happen to get paid? That's my attitude. Yeah. Okay, I think I shall move on to other questions. If you have more thoughts about this, you can post more things, okay? Next, Rosie asks, when we do merit, how to make the dedication, and it was said with a vow. Okay, so when we do merit, I presume you mean like you do something meritorious. Yeah. How to make the dedication? How do you make the dedication? Well, you can recite the standard verses like 愿消三障诸烦恼 and so on, or you can just bring to mind, like and just say with your own words, with this wholesome deed that I've done, how do you want to make use of it? If you imagine it to be a magic box, okay? If you imagine it to be like a present box, and you are going to get some gift inside, what do you want to do with this gift? If you can assign the outcome, what is the outcome you want to assign it to? Yeah, so you can do that. And on the question of merit, don't think that merit must be something humongous. You come up with the solution to coronavirus. I mean, if you can, please do that now. Okay? But holding the door, you know, yeah, and just asking someone like, are you okay? That is meritorious. As the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, do not think little of small good. Little by little is a pot filled up. Yeah. And now, yeah, now if you just wear your mask, stay at home, I think that is being compassionate to others. Wilson asks, is there a Dhamma teaching on courage? Well, yes, there are a lot of teachings on courage. Yeah. There is this phrase called abhaya, fearlessness. Yeah, it's somewhat linked. Yeah, in the Buddha, all the like images or the drawings and carvings, we have this expression. Yeah, the palm upright. Yeah, and it symbolizes fearlessness. Yeah. Is somewhat linked to courage, but perhaps not so much the same. Yeah. Courage. Let me see. Any teachings on courage? Is there any particular thing you like to know, Wilson, about courage? Maybe you can share more, give me some context, then I can maybe touch on it. Yeah. Sharing Heng says good afternoon. Good afternoon back. Jean asks, 缘起有自性空，反闻反自性。Is these two 自性 the same? Well, no, 自性空 is not this 性. Yeah, let me write it out for you. The 缘起有 and the 缘 is okay, I'm not sure whether that's actually the 简体字, but the 性 is definitely not correct. I'm going to just write this out in Chinese. The 缘起有 的缘是因缘的缘，不是原来的缘。缘起有。And 自性空 is 自性空。Yeah, this 自性 is the nature, self nature. Okay, so when you write 反闻闻自性, I don't know whether you copy correctly, but the 性 that you use is faith. Yeah, so this 性 is faith, whereas this 性 in the 自性空的性, this is actually nature. Yeah. So they are slightly different, but because you got the 缘起有自性空, the words is wrong, so I'm not sure whether the other one is correct, because personally I'm not really into the 楞严经. Yeah, so if you can give me the exact quote, provided your quote is correct, we can discuss. Okay, but if not, just by the quote you have, the 缘起有自性空 itself, you got it wrong. So the meaning is quite different. Okay, and let me see what else. Yeah, so Jin, I replied to you. Please let me know if you have more things to add on that. Paulan, good afternoon. 缘起有自性空. Yes, Esther, that's correct. How may I know how to deal with every unrestrained defilements? Oh, this question is good, but it's too open-ended, because to deal with every unrestrained defilement, every then maybe let me focus on the unrestrained part first. So defilements by nature is unrestrained, and so cultivation is about restraining ourselves. Yeah. So there's no such a thing as restrained defilements. Defilements by nature is always unrestrained, and hence the cultivation is about restraining them. Yeah. But depending on the type of defilements, because when you say every type of every defilement, right, then it's a bit too open-ended. Yeah. So depending on what kind of defilements, there will be different approaches. Perhaps I can answer by saying that one of the first thing to do, as far as defilements are concerned, is to recognize that defilements are harmful to ourselves. Yeah. So one of the exercises that I sometimes share with students is, when you are angry, don't be too quick to try to remove the anger. Doesn't mean to succumb to the anger and to act on the anger as well. No, but to go and observe what the anger is doing to us. Because until we see clearly the harm that anger is doing to us, not the other person, anger itself, what anger is doing to us, how anger affects us both physiologically, emotionally, and cognitively, that when we are angry, physically we have less control of our body. Sometimes if you are angry enough, your body can tremor, your speech becomes a bit slurred, pronunciation go off, our pitch goes up, yeah, our breathing because the chest tighten. Yeah, and of course it depends on individuals. Yeah, some people when they're angry they become cold, meticulous, and even more articulate. But individuals have to go and observe what anger do to them. But even more importantly is anger clouds our judgment. Yeah, we don't have to take Buddha's word for it. The Buddha described anger like that the agitated mind is like a pond where there are different water lilies, different plants, and so on and so forth, rock stones. But when the mud is stirred up, yeah, the water is agitated, and you look through, you cannot see what is inside. But if you let the dust, the sand, and the water settle down, then the whole pond becomes clear. Whatever is inside becomes clear. So in the same way, if we don't realize that anger does this to us, and we start to look at things through angry lens, then it's very difficult for us to see clearly, and we may make the wrong judgment call and take the wrong actions. Yeah. So this is just one example. The same goes for greed, goes for delusion. So first thing, recognize the harm that our defilements do to us. Recognize how you can actually or how to identify defilements, because many times defilements arise, we are not aware. Yeah, then we can talk about working on them, and depending on what kind of defilements, we may have slightly different approaches. Okay, hope that give you a starting point. Yeah. Perhaps just one last thing to add is, don't be too hard on yourself if there are defilements, but also don't condone your defilements. Yeah. Recognizing that there's defilements in us is to see that, well, don't set yourself up for failure. If you expect after learning Dharma to become like the Buddha immediately, then of course you're going to fail. And one or two more times and then you get disheartened and you just give up. Doesn't help anybody. But to have a realistic expectation of ourselves that we are unenlightened, so once in a while maybe defilements may stir. But not to take that as an excuse that it's okay, but to have more self-awareness that this is a problem, so that we are mentally prepared, yeah, to work on it. Yeah. So it's like readiness awareness, yeah, to know clearly where you are. Then you can work on it. Alvin Chan, you're the man. Okay, Li Hua. Good afternoon. Refer to 12 links of dependent origination. Mental formation that influences consciousness can be explained as karma and past karma related. Or I presume that is the question. Well, when we look at the 12 links of dependent origination, and look at the original text, the term that they use is that mental formation, 无明缘行行缘识, that mental formations conditions consciousness. That with mental conditions as a condition, mental formations as a condition, then consciousness arises. So it's not that mental formation influences it, but it conditions it. It is a condition for consciousness to arise. Yeah. So can be explained as to karma and past karma. Yes, the mental volition or mental formation is oftentimes looked upon as the karma in the past. Yeah, usually seen in that way. But you must know that it's not as though karma is always in the past. Karma is just action. So, like in present life, karma happens also. So, when we say that the ignorance, then mental formations or mental volition, that these two factors are for the past life, it doesn't mean that these two only happen in the past life. It just means that if you look at the sequence in terms of a progression from past to the present to the future, then it's in the past life. But these same two factors is happening in this life, conditioning future life. Yeah, and in future it will arise as well until we attain enlightenment, and in turn condition yet future lives. I hope that becomes clear. I have a rather comprehensive chart. It's not just 3 life but multiple ones to show how the progression. Yeah, there's a Heart Sutra coming up. A bit of a shameless plug here. So do sign up. Let me just put up the link here. Those who have not signed up, you all can sign up. I'll be covering that in the Heart Sutra as well. Yep. So let me see, where was I? Okay, so Lei Hua's first question answered. GF Chang, Amitofo. Okay. Ping Fa Amitofo. Yi Hao Amitofo. Okay, Popo says, 师父你说的真是一针见血，活生生的活例子，阿弥陀佛。Yeah, 因为你有人生经验，所以才感觉一针见血，阿弥陀佛。慈悲慈悲。Can this because come from our own perception and ego? If we understand how our mind works, it can help us to be happy and work with others. Definitely, you're right. Oftentimes it's our perception and our ego. I mean, we are not enlightened, so ego is there. The question is, how do we work around this ego? How can we tame this ego gradually? Not instantly. If you expect yourself, learn a few classes, read a few books, meditate a few hours, then boom, immediately tame your ego, then let me assure you, you're setting yourself up for failure. And then what will happen is that you get so pumped up after a few talks and maybe a couple of retreats, and then you're like, wow, chong ah! And then you realize it doesn't work. And then you get disheartened, disappointed, and just go all the way rock bottom. And then you go rock bottom for a while, and then you feel, self-deluded, you are self-delusion, you have self-delusion, or you are, what do you call that? What is the word? Like you are totally, utterly disappointed with yourself and everything, wallow in self-pity, binge yourself. And then after a while, you're like, oh, this is too much. You must pick yourself up. And then you go and listen to some Dhamma talk, and then you're like, wow, pump up again. Then you're like, chonga, and then boom, you fail. You manage to be good, to do everything right for a few days, and then you fail, and then you get disheartened again. Yeah, it's not sustainable. So instead, know where you are. Maybe you're enlightened, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not that enlightened. Yeah, maybe you're not so kind. Maybe you're not so patient. Be real to yourself. But it doesn't mean to condone yourself also. Okay, but to work from where you are, and then, as they say, baby steps. Yeah, to me that's more sustainable. Then you won't get disappointed and burn out. Hello for those who have just come online. Yes, middle path, absolutely. From Chloe Yueling. So Rosie adds further, something like dana helped, but I didn't do any dedication. So the thing about dedication is very interesting. Like, there are so many things we do in life, but we never like put our palms. After we hold the lift door, we open the door for people. We never immediately like 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。We never do that, right? So what happened to all these merits? Huh? Have you all thought about it? When you queue at the train station, at the bus, and you help this old lady up or the old uncle up, that's merit, right? Then Did you do dedication? If you didn't, then what happened to all these merits? Actually, the truth is, the dedication that we do is the formal one that we do, but what it means is we are planting seeds, we are planting aspirations with our mental determination, but it doesn't mean that besides that there's no dedication, because every day when we look at things, when we interact with people through our eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, and we think about the past, future and present with our mind, there are things that we delight in. There are things that draws us. And we may have a very subtle fluttering in our mind, thinking, as we see this post on Facebook, someone going for some puja, someone who did some retreat, and you look at it and say, wow, that's nice. That's a dedication. The same goes, dedication is not just about spiritual things, you know. When you see someone post an LV bag, of whatever bag, and you're like, whoa, like, so nice. That's a form of dedication. Yeah. When you see your friends, or you see just some random advertisement, and your heart just move that beat. To that beat that your heart move, that beat of dedication is planted. Yeah. You know, the 见作水洗. Yeah, you see something you delight, yeah, you're planting a bit of inclination in that direction. The question is, if we can have a whiteboard and put all this, like each time you have this small bit of thoughts, like, hey, that's nice, and then you write a post-it note, yeah, and you paste it up. And when it's wow, I really want to have it, and you keep on thinking about it, each time you think, one more. And at the end of the day, how many of this will be to help people? How many of this will be to go after some worldly gratification? How many of it will be for spiritual cultivation? How many of it will be out of kindness? How many of it will be filled with anger? Yeah, all this is our mental, determination. Yeah. So that's why in Buddhism we encourage people to do dedication regularly, and it is to help us direct our mind, direct our mind in the wholesome, positive, skillful, fruitful direction. Yeah, because otherwise we are just going all over the place most of the time. Yeah. So okay, so I hope that answers your question. So like if you do dana, you do some help, after that you don't have to sit down there and then chant for half an hour. Yeah, you can just have a thought like, in this whatever you want to dedicate towards. But as an example, you help someone do something, yeah, before that you can have a thought, yeah, by doing this, may this be for the welfare and benefit of this person and all beings. And after that, just have the same thought. Very simple. You don't have to have a long verse, half an hour recitation. Doesn't have to go and light incense and all those things. Just in your mind, just think, may this be for this person's welfare and benefit, and for all beings' welfare and benefit. Okay? So, will consciousness cease when one enlightened on the Dhamma? Ching Yam asked this question. So when the Buddha attained enlightenment, was there any more consciousness? Was he conscious? Was he able to think? Was he able to discern what is right and wrong? Was he able to determine who has the mental faculty to understand Dhamma or not? We should say yes, right? In which case then we cannot say consciousness has ceased. Yeah. So that's attaining enlightenment. How about entering paranibbana? That question, the Buddha said, that is a fruitless discussion. don't waste your time on the second part, because second part is after the Buddha has passed away into Parinibbana, or whoever attained arahanthood, enter Parinibbana. What happened after that? The Buddha's stand is that's fruitless. Why? Because discussing that will very likely lead you in the wrong direction, because the starting point is wrong. Because the starting premise, it seems to be that the person should be defined by the consciousness. Yeah. So, but the enlightened ones don't identify with that, and the consciousness is part of this mental fabrication that arises due to conditions, not so much a permanent entity that we call self. Yeah. So if the starting premise of the question is flawed, then whatever answer you get will actually draw the wrong conclusion. Yeah. And that's why in the sutta, the Buddha oftentimes dismissed this question as irrelevant at best. And sometimes I also want to, sometimes I'm a bit naughty. I also ask students like, so are you on the verge of attaining enlightenment? If not, then this question may not be so applicable. Yeah, I mean, not to put anybody down. Yeah, see, these kind of questions are interesting intellectual exercise. I'm more interested, I'm not saying that you have to or anybody have to be, but I'm more interested in using the Dharma to look at defilements and suffering, because that's the purpose of the Dharma, not as a academic intellectual exercise. Yeah. Okay. So Jin replied, same thing. So would you like to, Jin, would you like to give me the full quote? Because without the full quote, it's not easy for people to, yeah, I think it's better to put in a full quote. Pamela says, a very close person of mine passed away recently. Can you explain more about the 49 days after death, on what is happening? According to the commentaries, to the teachings, after a person passed away, there are different cases of rebirth. So there are those who have committed heavy karma, heavy wholesome karma, heavy unwholesome karma. So either way, yeah, the rebirth is spontaneous, very, very swiftly. Death comes, they get reborn to heavenly realms or to hell, yeah, or to the lower realms, very spontaneously. So that's for heavy karma. So barring heavy karma, then after that, according to the teachings, every 7 days there'll be a what do you call that? A precursor form of what is the, in a way, most potential rebirth that will manifest. And in these 7 days, if the person who has just passed away were to grasp onto it, in other words, connect with that karma, then the person would take rebirth. But the person has 7 days. And within these 7 days, if the person do not connect with it, then that intermediary state, what we call 中阴身, would cease. Yeah, would cease. And then a new intermediary stage would arise spontaneously, connecting with another kind of rebirth. Yeah. So this will repeat all the way under the 7th cycle. So altogether 7 becomes 49 days. So what is unclear is whether it is a hard number where die 49 days, you miss that, somehow you'll be reborn anyway. It's not clear from the text, but it seems as though it's a statistical probability that latest, okay, longest it takes is 49 days. Yeah. And there are a few different clarification in the text about how some rebirth require parental conditions, so it takes a bit more time. Some may not, like spontaneous rebirth, heavenly, hell, hungry ghosts. Some hungry ghosts. Yeah, some of the ghost realms require parents also, and so animal realms require require parents rather. So as long as the conditions are right, then they can take rebirth. The thing is, what the Buddha observed is that the rebirth cycle don't depend on other people, not on some higher authority to decide where you go, but rather depend on the person's karma. Yeah, and when we say depend on the person's karma, then it depends on which of the karma ripen. Yeah, and which is why there's prevalently across the different traditions this focus on maintaining clarity of the mind, such that we would connect with the wholesome karma when we are passing on. So, case in point, in the Buddha's time, there was this person who came to see the Buddha and asked the Buddha some questions, and after that, around lunchtime, he was going to leave. And then this thought arose in him. He had this fear. Yeah, so this is related to Pamela's question. Okay, and he had this fear that if he were to leave at that point in time, because the streets are busy, there are a lot of different people with elephants, with cows, with horses, horse carts, and so on and so forth. He was concerned that if he were to go out at that point in time, he might get knocked down by one of these vehicles and pass away. And if he should pass away in this way, then he may be reborn in a bad state. So he raised this concern with the Buddha, and the Buddha replied him saying that, and asking him that if a tree were to be growing in a certain direction, say like east direction, and now suddenly someone were to chop it off, will it fall in the eastern direction or the western direction? And of course the king, or rather that person, I can't remember whether it's a king, I will check and maybe post the sutta later. That person basically said, of course you'll incline towards, you'll fall towards where it has been growing, towards that direction. So the Buddha said, yes, indeed. And in the same way, you have been inclining towards wholesomeness throughout your life. So now, even if you were to die prematurely, your rebirth will incline towards the wholesomeness. You wouldn't just suddenly, boom, go the other way. To me, that gives us a lot of confidence that it's not simply the last moment, but the whole momentum of our life. That if our whole momentum of our life has been generally towards wholesomeness, then in a way it's linked to courage. Yeah, Wilson's question on courage. Yeah, Buddhism provides courage or helps us to develop courage in a very different way. That we have courage facing death, not because we think that we're not going to die, or that this way or that way, that the Buddha is going to be there to protect us, but the Buddha instead teaches us how to prevent the causes of bad rebirth, and hence we have no fear. We are courageous. Yeah, the Buddha himself was questioned, was asked once when he was in the forest, and the king asked him like, how do you sleep well at night? And he said, yeah, pretty okay. Paraphrasing, okay. And the king was surprised, like, how do you stay in the forest without any guards to protect you and be able to sleep at ease? That you are okay. Whereas the king himself stay in the palace with guards and security and everything, but he cannot sleep. He has fear. Yeah. So in Buddhism, fearlessness or courage stems from a different place. It stems from inner strength and not outward strength. It stems from not bullying people. Yeah. It doesn't stem from there. It stems from this clarity, knowing that the things that the way things are is the way things are. And once you accept and understand, you see clearly that things are the way things are, then there's no more fear of how they would turn out. Yeah. So Buddhist angle of courage is quite interesting. So, Wei Fen, good to see you here. On the topic of no self, it is easier to practice with colleagues or people that we are not so close with. Do you have any advice on how to practice, how we can practice it with our close ones, like spouse, parents, siblings, persons we have more attachment with? Yes, you are absolutely right. Uh, at the get-go, most people may think that with colleagues it's difficult, but actually it is easier. With our families and friends, people with whom we are close with, whom we are emotionally invested in, it becomes tougher, and precisely because of that. It is tougher because of our personal divestment in them, that we are personally divested in them, that we have vested interest. That's the thing. And why? Because we consider them to be our somebody. But of course they are our somebody, right? So how? It's about changing our frame, There's this exercise again in the Heart Sutra, looking at our relationship with others. Yeah. We tend to look at others in terms of us, but we fail to see that they are who they are depending on many other people, many other conditions. Yeah. Now, before we go further, and we have overshot time quite a bit, perhaps it's important to take note of one thing. Perhaps the difficulty in applying the teaching on no self with people we are close to is the expectation we have of them. That we expect them to respond to our change. That because we change, they should change. Whereas with colleagues, perhaps, if they do it this way or that way, we're not so bothered because we don't really expect them to change the way we want them to change. And if it's anything to go by, this is what I see in many relationships, whether it's between siblings, with parents, or with spouse. Yeah, this expectation we have of others because they are our somebody. Yeah, we have to ask ourselves, is our expectation calibrated with reality? Yeah. Yeah, because while we work on no self, we have to also know that no self is not just about us, it's about them. It means that we have no control over them also, not just about us, but over them also. Yeah, because many times our conflict with people is about we wanting to subtly, unknowingly control them. Yeah. Because who doesn't want things to go our way? This is a topic I want to go into more. Perhaps next week we can look into in more detail. So I'm going to just put a note here to follow up next week. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this question. It's very good. So I'm going to just tag the rest to highlight that we okay, I'm going to just read through some of the questions. Daphne Go says, I'm very lazy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sifu is also very lazy. To me, to recognize that you are lazy and to actually be able to say it, to admit that you are lazy, I think that's a start. Yeah. A lot of people who don't recognize that are actually lazy, but they don't realize that. Yeah, so recognizing that you are lazy is a very important step towards practicing diligence in your practice. Okay, I'm going to also pin this so that I'm going to reply to this also to follow up next week, because we have severely run short of time once more. I have this not very good habit of overshooting time. I'm event organizer's worst nightmare. I should change. Yes, for the longest time. Wow, work and no self, a lot of people have thoughts about it. Yeah. So I'm gonna just stop here. I'll come back to comment if necessary on the rest, because the next class is overdue. I'm supposed to start at 3:15. I'm going to end up having to start at 3:30 or so. Appreciate all your questions and comments. I'm going to either reply them or shelf it for next week. Okay, so keep a lookout. Next week we're going to revisit these questions because these are good questions. I want to address them. All right. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Hope everybody is keeping well. It's wonderful to stay connected. Yeah, I hope everybody can keep their sanity. Some students ask me like, "Are you okay?" You know, for me, well, monk's life is basically stay at home. You know, whether it's a monastery or your own jingse or something. So the only difference is my classes have gone online. Yeah. Because other than that, before the COVID-19, before the circuit breaker, before the measures were in place, I don't really go out anyway. Yeah, I go out only to give classes. I go out when I'm invited to visit patients in hospital for memorial services or for lunch offering. Other than that, I don't go out. I just don't. So for me, it's pretty okay. But I hear from some students that they are like it's starting to, you know, reach their threshold. If this helps, to me it's like meditation. When we think of 1 hour meditation, it feels like wow, 1 hour. But if you think about it, I like what one venerable shared with me back in 2007, and that's way before this whole thing about 1 minute meditation. Yeah, he shared with me. He said that he heard of this, that if you can do 1 minute meditation, that's all you need to do. Just do 1 minute at a time. And I was like, and then he looked at me like, 60 minutes. 1 hour is just 60 times 1 minute. Just do it 60 times. And it just blew me away. And I know it seems common sense, but that's the thing about perspective, you know. Oftentimes our memory, our ability to link things has helped us develop as a civilization, as a species, you know. And it's also what helps us to cultivate, isn't it? But sometimes it also causes us to become overwhelmed, because when you link up the future yet to come 60 minutes, the 59 minutes that has not come, and because it has not come, and you go and link them all together, then it feels so much, you know. Because even for the 1 minute, the only thing you can experience is the current second. In fact, it's not even 1 second, it's the current moment. So if I can take what that venerable shared with me further, it's not even 1 minute, it's one breath. And that's why, you know, to me, I start to appreciate the Buddha's teaching about how when we appreciate impermanence, it's about the in and out breath. That our life is just the in and out breath, not how many years, just the in and out breath. Because 80 years or 50 years, every moment is just an in and out breath. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you look at the COVID-19, the circuit breaker, yeah, it has been extended to by another 4 weeks to 1st of June. 1 day at a time. You can't live 4 weeks at a time. Just like you cannot have all the meals in your life all at once. 1 mouth at a time. Don't try to have 2 mouths at a time. You're going to choke. Yeah, if it helps. All right. So keep calm, meditate, practice, and stay healthy, stay safe. Take care. 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛。起立。